Welcome back. I'm Ignis Blackwood, the host of the Hellfire Book Club. Tonight we are discussing one of the most famous UFO books ever written, Timothy Good's Above Top Secret, The Worldwide UFO Cover-Up. I'll go through the book, chapter by chapter, and give you my opinion. If you've read this book, please include your own reactions and opinions in the comments. If you haven't read it, then come back after you do so, and let us know what you think. And now, let's begin. Before we turn the pages, let's talk about the author. Timothy Good isn't just some writer chasing lights in the sky. He's a British researcher who's spent decades collecting UFO reports, interviewing witnesses, and digging through government documents. He's briefed members of the Pentagon, the U.S. Congress, and even the British government on UFO matters. By the time Above Top Secret came out in 1987, Good had already built a reputation as one of the most serious investigators in the field. He wasn't interested in wild speculation. He wanted hard evidence, eyewitness testimony, and official files. That's why this book hit so hard. It was one of the first to show in detail that governments around the world had been quietly studying UFOs all along. The book opens with a foreword from Admiral of the Fleet, Lord Hill Norton, one of Britain's highest-ranking military officers, not some random UFO fan. He flat out states that the evidence for UFOs is overwhelming, that governments are hiding the truth, and that the public deserves answers. Imagine starting a book with that endorsement. If an admiral of the fleet thinks UFOs are real and the secrecy is deliberate, you pay attention. Timothy Good lays it out plainly. Are governments of the world hiding proof of UFOs? He points to the 1979 House of Lords debate in the UK, where officials basically said, yes, people report strange things, but it's mostly misidentifications. And yet, behind closed doors, intelligence briefings and memos admit some cases can't be explained. Already, we see the double game, one face for the public, another for the classified files. That theme runs through the entire book. Prologue: Ghost Aircraft, 1933 to 34. Ghost Rockets of 1946. The book kicks off with early mysteries. Scandinavia, 1933 to 34. Pilots and civilians report ghost aircraft, with searchlights flying in storms where normal planes couldn't operate. No insignias, sometimes totally silent. Newspapers cover it. Officials scratch their heads. Fast forward to 1946 after the war. Sweden is plagued by ghost rockets. Hundreds of reports of strange missile-like objects streaking across the skies. Some crash into lakes. Investigators dive in. Nothing is found. Not enemy weapons, not meteor showers. The reports remain unexplained. My take is this. Before Roswell, before flying saucers were even in the headlines, people were already describing craft that didn't fit the technology of the time. This wasn't American hysteria. It was global. Years before Kenneth Arnold or the summer of 1947. Chapter 1, 1943 to 54. Foo Fighters, Massey Project. World War II brings us the famous Foo Fighters. Allied pilots describe glowing balls of light pacing their bombers. They weren't German aircraft, they weren't anti-aircraft fire, and they didn't behave like natural phenomena. Sometimes they flew in formation, sometimes they darted away at impossible speeds. Rumors spread of a secret British investigation called the Massey Project, but officials later deny it existed. Maybe it was real, maybe it wasn't. Conveniently, the records are missing. Here's the takeaway. These weren't farmers mistaking Venus for a saucer. These were trained aircrew in life or death situations. If anyone could tell the difference between an enemy plane and something unknown, it was them. And when the denial started, they set the template for everything that followed. Deny, deflect, destroy the files. Chapter 2, Room 801. Top Secret, 1955 to 59 Topcliffe sighting. The author introduces us to Room 801 inside Britain's Air Ministry. This was where UFO reports were funneled, reviewed, and locked away. Thousands of files. One standout case, the 1952 RAF Topcliffe sighting. Multiple airmen on the ground see a silver disc-shaped object pacing a jet. When the jet banks, the object tilts in perfect synchronization, like it's shadowing the pilot. Then it shoots upward at a speed no aircraft of the time could match. The witnesses are seasoned servicemen. Their reports go straight to Room 801. Officially, nothing unusual to report. Privately, case files marked top secret. Chapter 3, A Matter of National Security, 1960 to 79. In this chapter, the stakes rise. The 1960s and 70s bring a flood of sightings. Airline pilots reporting near misses, police officers tracking discs, radar operators confirming objects moving faster than jets. The pattern is always the same. Public statements, probably misidentified stars. Internal memos, objects of unknown origin considered a matter of national security. Here's my takeaway. If it's a balloon, you don't classify it. If it's a star, you don't stamp it top secret. The very act of treating UFOs as national security issues tells us the governments knew more than they admitted. Chapter 4, December 1980. Rendlesham Forest and Halt Memo. Now the blockbuster, Rendlesham Forest, December 1980. U.S. Air Force personnel at RAF Woodbridge see strange lights in the woods. Some men report a metallic craft on the ground. They take radiation readings. They find indentations in the soil where it landed. Then comes the Halt Memo. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, the deputy base commander, writes a formal report to Britain's Ministry of Defense titled Unexplained Lights. He describes his men observing a triangular craft, strange beams of light, and physical traces left behind. Halt even led a patrol himself and recorded what he saw on tape. This isn't campfire gossip. It's an official memo from a career officer documenting a UFO encounter. The MOD buried it for years. My thoughts? Well, when a deputy base commander risks ridicule by putting his name on a UFO memo, you know something extraordinary happened. And the fact it was sat on for so long tells us everything about how seriously it was taken behind the scenes. Chapter 5, Through Adversity to the Stars. Official motto of the Royal Air Force, 1981 onward. Timothy Good describes how members of the House of Lords, including peers with military backgrounds, stood up and asked blunt questions. What are these objects being tracked on radar? Why do we have reports from pilots and servicemen that remain unexplained? And most importantly, what is the Ministry of Defense doing about it? The official answers were predictable. Yes, people see things. Yes, reports are collected. But no, there's no threat to national security, and therefore no need for further action. Case closed, at least publicly. Behind the scenes, files continue to be compiled, sightings quietly studied, and radiation traces, radar returns, and eyewitness accounts slipped into classified folders. One case. Good highlights involved low-level sightings over military bases in the UK, investigated internally, but dismissed to the public as of no defense significance. My reaction? That phrase became the government's shield. UFOs could hover over installations, pace jets, even leave physical traces in the soil, and still be deemed of no defense significance. What's striking is how often politicians pressed for more information and ran into a brick wall. It shows the secrecy wasn't just about keeping things from the public. It extended to elected officials as well. Even lawmakers were given the same carefully worded brush-offs as the newspapers. That's when you know it's not just disorganization, it's policy. Chapter 6 to 10. Around the World. Now the author takes us global. France runs official studies culminating years later in the Cometa Report, which would admit UFOs are real, physical, and possibly extraterrestrial. Italy's Air Force collects reports, with some involving discs interfering with military maneuvers. Spain investigates pilot sightings. Australia logs Qantas crew reports of metallic discs. Canada quietly files away civilian and military encounters. China admits to multiple sightings. The USSR allows reports of structured craft monitored by military radar. The pattern repeats. Governments collect, investigate, then downplay. Here's my reaction. When farmers in Portugal, pilots in Australia, and generals in the USSR all describe the same thing: structured discs, impossible speeds. Cultural bias doesn't explain it. This is global consistency. Chapter 11. 1947 to 1954. Roswell and the First Great Wave. Okay, folks, this is the chapter where the American file drawer bursts open. We're talking Roswell, the summer of '47 saucer wave, the first Air Force program, Sign, Grudge, Blue Book, and the research that kept this topic alive for decades. Roswell, July 1947. A rancher, Mac Brazel, finds strange debris on the Foster Ranch. The Roswell Army Airfield initially announces they've recovered a flying disc. The Roswell Daily Record runs the headline. Hours later, the story flips to weather balloon. That lightning-fast backtrack is the Roswell tell. If it's a balloon, why lead with flying disc and only remember the balloon after a call up the chain of command? Eyewitnesses, including Marcel and later family accounts, describe foil-like feather-like material that snapped back to shape, I-beam-like sticks with strange symbols, and debris that didn't behave like balsa wood, rubber, or tin. The body's narrative kicks in from later testimonies tied to recovery operations near other debris fields. Controversial? Yes. But it's part of the record researchers had to weigh. Two official Air Force explanations decades later in 1994. U.S. Air Force report: Roswell was Project Mogul, a classified high-altitude balloon array for detecting Soviet nuclear tests. In 1997, U.S. Air Force case closed. Any bodies were anthropomorphic test dummies dropped in the 1950s. However, the dummies' defense falls apart when you consider that the dropped dummies didn't take place until the mid-50s. Nice try. Chapter 12. Collision Course. Chapter 12 is all about the risks. The times when UFO encounters weren't just lights in the sky, but direct, deadly confrontations. And the story that dominates this chapter is one of the most chilling in the early Air Force files: the Thomas Mantell case. The Mantell incident, January 7, 1948. Captain Thomas Mantell, a decorated World War II pilot with over 2,000 flying hours, is scrambled from Godman Army Airfield in Kentucky to intercept an unknown object reported in the sky. Multiple ground observers, including state police, describe a huge metallic craft, silver, glowing, moving slowly at first, but then ascending. Mantell and 3 other pilots in F-51 Mustangs climb after it. As they ascend past 15,000 feet, the other pilots peel off, low on oxygen. Mantell presses on, reportedly describing the object as metallic and tremendous in size. Minutes later, his plane spirals down. Mantell crashes and dies. No mayday, no further description. A veteran combat pilot chasing a daylight object seen by dozens of people suddenly crashes. That's not just a sighting, that's a fatality tied to a UFO chase. First, the Air Force speculates he may have been chasing a Soviet aircraft, quickly dismissed. Then they suggest he was pursuing Venus. Later, they shift to the skyhook balloon theory. Top secret at the time, used for high-altitude research. But here's the problem. Skyhook wasn't widely acknowledged in '48, and no launch was confirmed in the area that day. Let's be real. Mantell was a seasoned combat pilot. The man knew the difference between Venus and a craft. And if it was a balloon, why did multiple ground witnesses describe it as metallic, structured, and moving? Timothy Good uses Mantell to launch into a series of similar collision course cases. 1948, Chiles Whitted case. 2 pilots report a cigar-shaped UFO with windows, blazing with light, passing dangerously close to their DC-3. 1950s near misses logged by commercial pilots. Discs overtaking airliners, sometimes causing evasive maneuvers. 1952, Washington, D.C. Jets scrambled after radar targets over the Capitol. Pilots see lights darting away at impossible speeds. Official explanation: temperature inversion. When near misses are logged by both commercial airlines and military, you're not talking about Venus. You're talking about safety of flight. And the Air Force knew it. Chapter 13. The DIA. The Defense Intelligence Agency quietly collects UFO reports. Not for public release, not through Project Blue Book, but their own classified channels. If UFOs were just stars and balloons, why involve the DIA? That's an agency for military threats. Clearly, the US government thought there was more here than swamp gas. Chapter 14. The CIA. The CIA's fingerprints are all over this. Timothy Good highlights the Robertson Panel of 1953, convened by the CIA. Their recommendation? Use the media to debunk UFO sightings and reduce public interest. The CIA also considered these sightings as potential tools for psychological warfare, that enemies could stage sightings to cause panic. My take? If UFOs were nothing, the CIA wouldn't waste resources planning how to weaponize them. Their very involvement proves the phenomenon was taken seriously. Chapter 15. NASA. NASA comes across less as a beacon of openness and more as a gatekeeper. Timothy Good points to the missing Apollo 11 tapes. The originals of the first moon landing vanished. Photos go missing or are obviously retouched. Astronauts hint at things they've seen, then go silent. For an agency dedicated to exploration, the gaps are glaring. My reaction? If you've got nothing to hide, why do your archives look like Swiss cheese? Chapter 16. Down to Earth, Crash Retrievals and Reverse Engineering. This is where the story shifts from lights in the sky to metal on the ground. Timothy Good loads this chapter with the claims that UFO craft haven't just been seen, they've been recovered. If true, this is the chapter that takes the phenomenon from speculation into the realm of secret technology. Roswell Revisited, 1947. Timothy Good circles back to Roswell because it's the cornerstone of crash retrieval claims. Witnesses described exotic debris, foil-like material that snapped back to shape, beams with strange markings, impossibly light but unbreakable. Later, testimonies spoke of bodies being recovered, stored, and autopsied. In this chapter, Roswell isn't just about the cover-up. It's about what may have been studied afterward. If debris was just balloon material, there's nothing to study. But if it was advanced alloys and engineered parts, then Roswell isn't just history. It's the seed of decades of hidden research. Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, 1965. A fiery object streaks across the sky, witnessed by thousands across the Midwest and Canada. It crashes near Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Locals report a metallic acorn-shaped object about the size of a car, partially buried in the ground. The military arrives quickly, cordons off the site, and hauls the object away under heavy guard. Official explanation: a meteor. But no impact crater, no meteorite fragments, just eyewitness accounts of something solid and metallic. Meteors don't get loaded onto flatbeds and driven off under armed escort. Whatever was in Kecksburg, it wasn't a space rock. Aztec, New Mexico, 1948. Often dismissed as a hoax, but the author notes the persistence of reports. A disc-shaped craft, 100 feet in diameter, crashes outside Aztec. Several occupants allegedly recovered. Oilfield workers and locals spoke of a retrieval operation. While researchers disagree on the evidence, Timothy Good treats Aztec as part of a larger pattern. Stories of craft recovered, quietly hidden away. Whether you buy Aztec or not, it's important because it shows how early the retrieval narrative began, right on Roswell's heels. Other retrieval rumors. Reports of downed objects in the Soviet Union, studied by their military. Claims of craft or debris retrieved in Canada and Australia. Even whispers of retrievals in Africa and South America. The common thread? Rapid military response, secrecy, and denials. Reverse engineering. Timothy Good emphasizes that if even one of these retrievals was real, governments wouldn't just lock the wreckage away, they'd try to reverse engineer it. Rumors swirl of secret programs in the U.S. where materials and technology were studied. Metallurgy labs analyzing exotic alloys. Electronics teams trying to understand propulsion systems. Speculation that breakthroughs in fiber optics, stealth tech, and advanced materials may have had roots in UFO debris research. One famous claim, physicist Bob Lazar alleged in the late 80s that he worked at a site near Area 51, studying propulsion systems from recovered craft. Timothy Good doesn't lean too heavily on Lazar, but the theme of hidden engineering efforts runs throughout the chapter. My take? Well, imagine sitting on a piece of tech decades ahead of its time. You wouldn't announce it. You'd squeeze every drop of advantage out of it, behind closed doors. Who knows? Maybe one day I could buy one of those gravity-defying hoverboards. Chapter 17. Above Top Secret. In the final chapter, Timothy Good lays out the big picture. UFO secrecy isn't random, it's deliberate, coordinated, and systematic. The tools are denial, ridicule, and suppression. The goal? Keep the public uninformed, keep the files closed. Whether the craft are extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or something stranger, the governments of the world have chosen silence. The question left hanging is simple. Are they hiding the truth because they know exactly what's going on, or because they don't? And that uncertainty terrifies them. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this book review, please like and subscribe. Until next time, take care.